There's a story, the essence of which is the basis of stories from virtually all persuasions. But an essence is an essence. An essence is an extraction, a deconcoction, just like vanilla essence is made from a vanilla bean, orange essence from an orange, etc., etc. So, what about if we dive deep enough to find out from where this essence is extracted? That's the challenge of this simple story. It's the story of a woodchopper. His life was very hard. He struggled every day to gather enough wood to take to the village, which was itself so poor that people could hardly extract a living, to try to earn enough to feed his family. All he possessed was his axe. But one night when he went to sleep, he had a dream. He dreamt that he was in a far-off place, and in that place there was a bridge. And on that bridge there was a soldier that paced back and forth, seeming to guard the bridge. Well, when the woodchopper woke up the next morning, the dream was so real to him. There was an urge in him to find this place. But then, throughout the day, he convinced himself, oh, it was just a dream. But then that same night, he had the dream again. But this time, not only did he see the soldier marching back and forth across the bridge, but he could actually see his features. Well, this made the dream even more real for him. So when he woke up, it bedeviled him throughout the day, an urgency, an urge to follow this dream, to see whether it was real. But then he dreamt again on the third night. And this time not only did he see the features of the soldier, but he saw on his head a helmet with a plume, and under the bridge there was a clear indication that there was something to be found, something like a treasure. Well, when he awoke, the urgency of the dream and the reality of it was so vivid that he decided then and there that he was going to pursue this dream to see whether it was real or not. So he went to his wife and he told his wife that he was going to embark on this quest. And she laughed at him. She said, but it was only a dream. But by this time, the resolve was very firm in him that he must find out whether this dream was real or not. So he set out on his journey, not knowing where he was to head. Where was he to find this bridge? There were bridges in many places. So he went from place to place, but when he asked people, did they know of a bridge, they would point to a bridge, but it was so vague that they just shook their head and left him. But then one day, after many adventures, the woodchopper came to a place where he was told that, oh yes, in the capital of this great land, there were soldiers that wore these helmets with those plumes. And so the wood chopper had a clue. So he headed for the capital of this great land. Well, of course, he had many more adventures and challenges along the way. But when he arrived at the capital city, sure enough, there were the soldiers with their helmets and their plumes. But where was the bridge? But suddenly, he turned a corner, and there in front of him was the bridge, just as he'd seen it in his dream. And there, crossing the bridge backwards and forwards, was the soldier with his helmet, with his plume. And the soldier had exactly the features that he had seen in his dream. So the wood chopper approached the soldier, and with his shovel that he'd exchanged for his axe, he asked the soldier, could he dig under this bridge? And the soldier laughed at him and said, why do you want to dig under this bridge? Well, of course, the wood chopper was obliged to tell the soldier his story about his dreams. Oh, said the soldier, you stupid fellow, everybody has dreams like that. He said, I myself have had a dream for the last 3 nights that I was in a place that was near a forest, and the soldier described it perfectly, what the house was like, and outside the house, just on the border of the forest, was a great oak tree, and under that oak tree there was buried a treasure. Well, when the woodchopper heard this story, he recognized that what the soldier was describing was his own house, and the forest that was just behind his house, and the oak tree that was just in front of the forest behind his house. And just at that time, the soldier took on a very stern countenance, and he said, and by the way, there's no way that you can dig under this bridge, because this bridge belongs to the king, and the king has me guarding this bridge so that it cannot be defaced in any way. So be off with you, off, off, off. So the woodchopper, recognizing that perhaps this journey had not been to find a treasure under the bridge, but to meet the soldier who would tell him about his dream. So he set off home. And when he arrived, even though he was empty-handed, his wife didn't scold him. She greeted him with great warmth. But not even waiting to sit down for a cup of tea and to relate any of his adventures, he went straight out with his shovel and started to dig under the oak tree. And when he did, before long, his shovel hit something metallic, and when he dug further, out came a chest filled with treasure. The woodchopper and his family were rich and lived off this treasure for the remainder of their lives. There's no doubt that we recognize the essence of this story. Perhaps we've heard many of the other versions of it. Perhaps we can even relate to it. Essence. We know what an essence means. A direct extraction from something, like the vanilla essence from the vanilla bean. But from what? From where in us is this story's essence extracted? What is behind the essence of this tale and its many, many other versions? We can relate to it. We can relate to the journey. We can retell the adventures we've had along the way. We can even recognize that after making a long journey, we did come back to our house.
It's like the seeker of God. This looking all of us, and we did the journey looking at the Father and coming back into self.
Right. But this self is a catchword too, isn't it? Self. Because if we relate our experience now to that Taoist saying, to study the way is to study the self is to lose the self, and the rest of the saying, you know. So that, in fact, in the process of making the journey and coming back, we find that there is no self. So what is this treasure that's being spoken of? I didn't find a treasure. From my own experience, in coming back to that journey, all I found was longing and loneliness, emptiness. A starting point indeed. So, recognizing that this treasure is meaningful in going further to find out what it is that this essence is extracted from. What is it that sent us on the journey in the first place? We have to dive deeper. Wouldn't you agree? Because in coming to this place where the whole journey has brought us to a space where we recognize there is no self, then what is the treasure? What's your experience? What would you recognize as being that from which these variations of this story in all persuasions virtually is extracted? What is it you've discovered, arriving back, digging? What is it?
It's our essence, embracing our essence.
Yes, we have to do that. But what is it that that essence is extracted from?
Connection to the energy of love.
Okay. Okay. And this is what happened for you? You came back and connected with the energies of life. This is very valid, isn't
I had
it?
a day where I purged everything.
Uh-huh.
Everything from the past is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat there like an empty vessel.
Right.
And you could say I had reset. Started again.
Okay.
That's what made me think it's a connection, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to that's true of yourself.
Okay. Did you, when you came back to that place and dug up the chest, did you open up and find aspects of a self, a diamond here and a ruby there and an emerald there, and
No, it lost its meaning.
lost its meaning? Lost its meaning. So what is it? What is it from which these stories have been extracted?
Because at the bottom is just a great emptiness,
Right.
and that it just pops up, seems as unique.
Right indeed. Okay. This is it, isn't it? What is this treasure that we found?
Like who we really are.
All right, on.
Like that God self, that who we really are without all the egos that we have by the time we come back. And it's, digging in that chest can be very painful to throw. Like you can find diamonds in that, but boy, there's a lot of other stuff that you're throwing out at the same time.
You bet.
And then the diamonds and that's the treasure that we keep.
Uh-huh.
That's our true self.
All right.
But all the rest is then all
Mhm.
thrown out. So life is just different. We just don't have all those other things that we had before.
Right on. Right on. So what's the kernel of this story?
You don't have the judgments anymore.
Pardon?
You don't judge.
Yes, we don't, of course.
We acknowledge our godness.
All
We
right.
acknowledge our...
Yes. And it doesn't have anything.
Well, there's only God.
That's right. Okay. But if you were to put this into the context of this story and all its other versions, recognizing the essence from which it's extracted, what would you describe this as being? Can we find a word for it? And as you can see from this is like so many of the other stories, is bringing us back to this place where we're challenged to name the unnameable, to express the inexpressible. But there's, of course, a purpose in that. So the challenge is to find a word to describe the indescribable. But we can clearly recognize it, and until we recognize it, there's not a possibility that we can describe it. So what is this from which the essence has been extracted to create many forms of this story and all other stories, fairy tales, folk tales, parables, all of them. That's the secret, isn't it? That's the secret that's contained in every story. What will we name it? That's our challenge. What do we call it?
Love. It's love.
Okay? That's when it takes a form, isn't it? That's what comes out of it, isn't it? But what is it?
Like
From where does love arise?
Filled with the water of life,
Aha, aha.
and it comes out of that.
Okay, we can make a beautiful poetry out of that country. We can. So let's do it. Let's make